I was born in central New York, April 22nd, 1957, small town, and I went to college in Potsdam State University up north for computer science, and with a plan to work at IBM, which worked out. I also played soccer for 3 years on the varsity team. But when I was in college, surprisingly, I heard that the Philadelphia Orchestra has a summer location where the whole orchestra leaves Pennsylvania and goes to Saratoga, New York for the month of August. So I went and I auditioned and I was accepted to sing with the Philadelphia Orchestra. So I sang with them in 1976 and 1977. I sang with Eugene Ormandy, Arthur Fiedler, Marian Anderson, Aaron Copland, Leonard Bernstein, and it was just incredible. I began working for IBM in 1970, a lot of attention. But at this time, in my first couple of years, people think that I don't have a problem with speaking, even back then, but I was okay one-on-one with people, but for some reason when I would stand up to give a talk, everything just seemed to fall out of my mind. And so I took a course in 1980 called Dale Carnegie for Human Relations and Effective Speaking. So I went from being uncomfortable, difficult, to really finding joy in presenting, because now I knew how to prepare for it and what might be effective. So I worked really hard at that. At the same time, as I was working on my MBA, so from the new confidence I had with IBM in 1982, I ran for IBM Club. IBM Club were about 14 IBM Club representatives for the 10,000 employees, and we would put together programming and sports activities. It was to enrich people's lives. And so I was elected by about 1,000 of the people to do that. And then 2 years later, because you couldn't be back to back, I became the president of the IBM Club. So going from scared of speaking to confident and then having these opportunities really helped the career tremendously. So while I was working at IBM full-time under pressure, I was a Dale Carnegie instructor. I was playing sports. I played softball. I was playing left field at the time. Later I pitched. And also I was very active in church. I was active in singing, in the Poughkeepsie singers there. And so I was really, and for a while working on my MBA. So it was, and then real estate. I met my wife today, July 31st, 36 years ago, 1982. And it was interesting because I never had a girlfriend before. I had female friends, we'd do a couple, but I never did. I was so busy all the time, I didn't have time for a relationship. If I had to dedicate to a relationship, I had to give up so many other things that I was enjoying. So I didn't do that. But when I met her, met Cindy, and really connected in a way that had never connected before. And then end of December we were engaged. So for not having a girlfriend, it went pretty quickly. We were ready to get married in the spring, but Cindy's brother was getting married, so we waited until Thanksgiving weekend of 1983 in Vassar College Chapel, and our reception was at West Point Officers Club, which was beautiful, 20-foot windows overlooking the Hudson River at the time. She was in corporate procurement, so when IBM didn't want to make parts, it would go out to Intel, Fairchild, etc. And so Cindy's job was to purchase those millions of parts. Now in this time frame, something new happened to Cindy and I. We had 2 children. In 1989, April 7th, Nicole was born. Then we had our second child, Brandon, who was born May 22nd, 1991. And something new happened. When I was on that executive resource opportunity with the ISD president, he said, "Can you talk to Nancy Stewart, make it better?" She said, "I'm about to begin heading up in Detroit a $5.6 billion infrastructure strategic project." So in a couple of months, Nancy Stewart comes to me, the director, said, "What can I do? I like the way you work with EDS and you're confident with them and you represent IBM. What can I do to get you to stay for a year?" And I was kidding. I said, "Move me to Florida." She said, "Done." She takes me to one of her direct managers. I've committed to him and moving and living, M&L, to Florida. She said, "You don't mind commuting every week from Tampa to Detroit? It's a lot for us." I don't mind at all. So they had this vision about what the new world will be like. And Ray Strecker, who was a key person in the automotive industry, shared this new concept they called workflow management. And boom, big explosion in my brain. I could not believe what I was hearing, because that was the missing piece of why IBM was not strong in application development, why applications did not reflect the natural flow of a company philosophy. So I had this creative idea called Global Enterprise Management, GEM. It was a gem of an idea. And so I had this idea, I videotaped the flow, and it shocked everybody. So then the word got out. Now this was the scary moment in my life. IBM was going to cut 100,000 employees. Massive cut when Lou Gerstner came in. So the rules were you could not change divisions. Well, we were a special project. We weren't a division. We were exposed. We were nothing, and I couldn't go back to the divisions I came from. So I was surplus. Right at that time, Nancy Green, who was the vice president of the aerospace industry, said, "This is an exception. This is going to change IBM." It did go to Lou Gerstner, head of 400,000 employees and 100,000 being cut, and I was spared. In 1994, I had been with the company for 15 years, and this was, you talk about the Maslow's self-actualization, where the greatest thing. This was the most joyful thing. I was doing something important. It was new. It was integrating a lot of complexity across the board. I was being respected for it. I was being recognized at the highest levels. Corporate cared about it. I was saved from surplus. So things were going really well. And Cindy was doing a great job with the kids, but I was continuing then to go to Brazil to talk about this. I went to Europe. I went to Japan. And so I was traveling various places, traveling throughout the United States. It was very high stress. And then I had built a team that could do this rapidly. And people wanted to start taking my technology team because they wanted to be successful in their engagement. So that was stressful and battling. And then the big model for consulting in IBM was that you got, as a consultant, you got your respect and your awards and bonuses and stuff based on billable hours. So no longer did it make sense to do all this in 1 week. I had to find a way to stretch it out. And so in this time, it was a heady time. It was an intense time. It was discovery time. Every company I went to was a new process. It was a new set of applications, a new set to accomplish. I had to build a team on the fly, ad hoc. It was intense, and people wanted to know more and more, and they wanted me to present at conferences. So it was very intense. But at this point in time, I had been gone Monday through Friday. I think only 2 or 3 times was I not home for my kids and my wife, which was quite a commitment, especially when I had engagements at Pacific Bell, Pac Bell in California and overseas. So then I said, I really need to come home. And remember, I had moved down to Tampa, Florida area. Well, IBM had the IBM Global Network. And so there was an opportunity, and it worked out. It was tough to leave that. I mean, there was no greater moment from a career standpoint of what was happening there with this workflow. So I said, I really need to go home and work at IBM at home. So that was nice to be home, doing similar things that I liked. There were enough people there that were forward thinking and wanted to learn more. And I worked on a few projects there in 97. And then, because I'm a big picture kind of guy, the vice president said that corporate wants to do re-engineering of our whole IBM consulting. So they want someone from every logical domain. So the IBM Global Network had to put someone up into New York to be president. So they selected me as a big picture guy. So I went up there, and they picked 5 people from the world, but they're from the U.S. And the 5 of us were responsible for re-engineering all of global services. And so the five of us re-engineered, and we created a roadmap to save, tens of millions of dollars in application costs. And at that time, I got promoted one more time, and at that time, I had invested in real estate that I mentioned, so I had done decently there. I had, when IBM was a laughing stock, I bought, in the course of the IBM employee purchase, I poured money into that. And the other thing was that the pharmaceuticals were bad-mouthed in the 92, 93 timeframe, and I'd been studying summary line about the history of stocks over 40 years, and I saw Merck, this pharmaceutical, and I focused on it. And I found it incredible. Merck, split, double, blah, blah, blah. So when the pharmaceuticals were all knocked down, I bought Merck. So between IBM and Merck, 700, 800% growth in those two by the end of 1999. So Rand, who wants to do things differently, at 42 years old in 1999, just after his major promotion, tied in, the future would have been really awesome and bright and financially very lucrative. And I was at that level, I was actually getting substantial stock options and bonuses based on the performance. So things were at the best it could be in every respect. But I said, I want to do something different. I want to be there for my children. So I retired early at 42 years old. So